Welcome, everybody. What a beautiful crowd. Welcome to our 45th annual meeting, so to speak. 45 years we've been at this environmental protection thing we do, and it's been working really well, and I'm sure you all have been keeping up on some of the things that we've been successful at lately, but I'll have our staff tell you about a few things as we go in the next few minutes before Paul does his presentation. I have one little housekeeping thing. The town of Crescent Butte is doing something called the Community Compass, and you may have heard about it. They asked me to mention to you that they would like comments from people by September 16th, and their executive summary flyer is out on one of the tables out front. So have one of those and give them a comment. They'd appreciate it. And next up, okay, I am going to introduce our executive director, Brett Henderson. That's you. Brett has been our director for a number of years, and he's been with HCCA for 12 years, which we really appreciate. We watched him grow from just out of graduate school into whatever he is now. and Brett informed us recently that he's going to be moving on from HCCA. And I don't know how many of you did not know that, but I wanted to make it, an announcement tonight so that everybody knows. We are not thrilled, but we're gonna be just fine. And he is gonna still be helping, as we make a transition, as long as it takes. So with that, I would like to. Yeah. Token of the board's appreciation for Brett. You don't have to open it right now. And I would like to introduce our board members who are here. Whoever you are, wherever you are, would you please stand up so I can see? We have Arvin, we have Aaron. Cheryl here is our newest board member. Natalie is on the board as well. And a couple of people couldn't make it, but I'm here too. So I am the board president, newly re-elected, so thank you all for voting and for voting our board members in. I guess that's really all I have to say before I hand it to Brett, who's gonna continue and say a few words and introduce the rest of our staff. And I want to say thank you all for all your support for all these years. I hope it continues because we've got more mountains to climb, and one in particular that still is not 100% saved. So please help us out as much as you can with that. And thanks for everybody who's come hiking with me too this summer. That's been really fun. There, okay, so here's Brett.
Thank you. Obviously, my name is Brett Henderson, Executive Director. So tonight I'm celebrating 12 amazing years with HCCA. I can't believe I've been fortunate enough to be here for over a quarter of the organization's history, helping accomplish what I believe some of the most important work in the Gunnison Valley. This year, I'm going to let our staff update you on what we do and all the amazing accomplishments that we've achieved so far this year. And I'm going to focus on why and how. So, why do we do this work? Well, in my time here, I've asked myself that question a lot. Why are we doing this work that requires witnessing and endlessly defending against threats to our vitality of our public lands and water? Why should an organization and community undertake this tireless advocacy? I think the answer is simple. I think it's because of love. I think that us here love our public lands, our local environment, wildlife, water, community, you name it. And it's because we love this place that we've been able to continue our work for the last 45 years. I think that we want to conserve and preserve this place that we love so much for future generations so that they can experience that same connection to our natural environment. I truly believe that love is a common thread that powers this work and your support. And next, the most fun part for me to describe to our membership is how. And that answer's simple too. That's you. Our organization's been very fortunate over the years, and we've benefited from what I consider a dream team of environmental attorneys and experts, and me in the middle trying to keep up with this inspiring staff. And honestly, they're just my friends. Sorry, I had some good notes. To keep my amazing friends here at HCCA able to do this work, it takes funding, and we receive about $300,000 every year. More than half of that's gifts from you, our faithful membership. And so, my ask of you tonight is this: after hearing all the updates from the great progress we've made over the years, and which in many cases has been a continuation of years, if not decades, of work from our predecessors, please donate. And if you've already given this year, consider giving again. Or take one of our envelopes at our table, give it to a friend, keep it as a reminder to donate when it's best for you. But if I can leave you with one thing, it's this: none of this work happens without you and all the things that we've been able to accomplish over 45 years. And every donation, large or small, counts. Your donations are much appreciated votes of confidence in our work. And it shows that our work is more relevant than ever. So please remember to donate, renew your membership, ask about planned giving, or join our revitalized High Country Hero program, which is a pledge to donate a consistent amount over 3 years. And while I'll no longer be the executive director of this amazing organization, I'll always be a strong advocate for its mission, and the organization will always have my heart. So I appreciate you, your continued generosity in supporting HCCA's work, our collective love for these amazing lands we call home, and thank you for the trust and support over the last 12 years. I gotta say, I'm really proud of all the great things Eli's done this year. We just brought him on as a full-time staff member, and he's crushing it.
And Greg, and you've done too, your time as ED here at HCCA. So my name's Eli Smith. I'm the stewardship director, and I started out last year as a master's of environmental management student, and I did my master's project with HCCA through Western Colorado University. And when I graduated, I joined the staff, and as you know, HCCA has for decades been protecting the public lands around here through advocacy work and a lot of great things, and now we have recently taken a new approach to some proactive advocacy with stewardship of these same public lands that we've been having a vested interest in. So in my role, we partner with the public land management agencies around here, Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to focus on climate resiliency projects locally on the ground, where HCCA brings in the volunteers to have that boots on the ground to do this habitat restoration work, protecting water quality, really focus on climate resiliency projects. And it's a good way for people to give back to the land that sustains us and be in relationship with this land that we do love so much, that Brett talked to us about. It's a great tangible way to do this, and this year we have a lot of exciting projects coming up. We've got our wet meadow restoration that has been going on for a long time here in the valley. And so you can look at our website to see how to volunteer or contact me directly. And we also have a new environmental stewardship fellow this year, Addie Mandeville, who's in the back there, if you want to stand up and wave. Yes. Yeah, we have a lot of fun out on the ground, and we kicked off this year by doing a fencing project in Taylor Park to protect some riparian areas, and we had a handful of middle school age girls join us. And there really is something for everyone to do out there, so don't feel like you can't contribute to give back to the land. Thank you so much for volunteers who have been out here in the past with me, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you and being on the ground with you in the future as well, too. So next I'd like to bring up our Public Lands Director, Matt Reed.
Thank you, Eli. And if you haven't signed up for a stewardship project, you must do it. They're so much fun. It's been such a change for the organization. Highly recommend it. Again, my name's Matt. I'm the Public Lands Director with HCCA. Been here for 12 years in this role, which is kind of crazy, and I'm sticking around for a little while, not heading out anytime soon. I wanted to update you all, let's see. 2 weeks ago, I was writing a grant report because part of the admin work in this job is grant applications, grant reports, things like that. And in the grant reports, I was asked to highlight accomplishments over the last year. And going back through notes and newspaper articles and things like that, it was pretty astounding the number of victories. Some of them small, some of them large, but conservation victories that the Public Lands Program has had over the last year. And I didn't really realize that until I was doing this grant report, putting it down on paper. So I wanted to share some of those with you all this evening. Interestingly, a lot of these are litigation, they're court decisions. And think about HCCA, we're in this fight, these fights, these battles from beginning to end. The court cases, when they happen, that's the end of usually a very long, multi-year process, starting with advocacy, outreach, e-blasts, letters, conversations, NEPA comments, more NEPA comments, finally culminating in court as necessary. So, what are some of the accomplishments over the last year? 2 weeks ago, HCCA, our partners in the BLM, finalized an agreement that will prevent new oil and gas leasing across 2.2 million acres of southwestern Colorado until the BLM supplements its environmental analysis and releases an amended plan for the upper North Fork Valley. If you ever get over there? Thankfully, on this side of Kepler, we're not dealing with the oil and gas threat. They very much are just on the other side of the pass, and a lot of that's Gunnison County. Might be kind of out of sight, out of mind, but it's an important issue. And those folks downstream, Paonia, we get a lot of our food from there. So this is a tremendous settlement that'll protect that area. Second, in May, the U.S. District Judge killed the North Fork Mancos Master Development Plan, an FMMDP, which was a plan from the agency that would have allowed 35 new natural gas wells across 35,000 acres, almost totally in northern Gunnison County. That's dead. That is totally. The decision protects 3 watersheds, 2 Colorado roadless areas, some of the best big game habitat around, and to put it into perspective, the project would have caused about 52 million tons of greenhouse gas pollution, equivalent to the annual pollution from a dozen coal-fired power plants. So, good work, and it's fun also building relationships and forging bonds with the communities downstream in Delta County. Third, if you recall, in 2020, Arch Coal at the West Elk Coal Mine punched in a mile of illegal road into the heart of the Sunset Roadless area. Shook me to the core. It's some of my favorite wild, untraveled habitat. Incredibly depressing. We've been challenging that coal mine for 12 years. Of course, we fought back upon discovering that illegal route. Well, in January, the Colorado Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety took an official position that Arch no longer has approval to construct roads under its state permit because of the North Fork coal area exception to the Colorado roadless rule has been vacated because of HCCA's previous litigation. Arch no longer maintains a legal right of entry to the Sunset Roadless area. So that doesn't mean that they couldn't access the coal reserves under there. They can't punch in roads, they can't put in drainage wells, they can't put in infrastructure that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to access the coal. So it's another significant win. Two more. So fourth, also Arch Coal, HCCA and our conservation partners sued the coal mine over illegally polluting without permits. Under Title V of the Clean Air Act, major sources such as the mine cannot emit air pollutants without an operating permit. We were able to settle with the mine. They have to, they're required now, per the settlement, to comply with the Clean Air Act, which is huge. It's not going to stop mining there, but it's going to ensure that it does what everybody else has to do when they have an operation like that. They have to obey the law. And then fifth, last, something that, not natural gas or coal mine, but GPLI, the Gunnison Public Lands Initiative. Gosh, that goes back a decade. HCCA's worked with 9 other groups in the county to develop a public lands proposal, wilderness, special management area recommendations. This summer, all that hard work, years of effort, coalesced into Senator Bennett releasing the draft GORP Act, Gunnison Outdoor Resources Protection Act. And at the end of the day, the GORP Act includes 500,000 acres of wilderness, special management area, all in Gunnison County, full mineral withdrawals, significant limitations on new road and route expansion, and other great conservation safeguards. So that's been a fun process. There's a ton of work to do. Legislation is it's not the best environment for federal legislation right now, to say the least. But that effort has, I think, coalesced and brought together some really diverse stakeholder groups in the county, and look forward to keep running with that and hopefully see it pass. So that makes me happy. These wins, that's what we do this for. And as Brett alluded to, or just flat out said, it's not possible without you and your support. So I appreciate it. Last, we have the Red Lady herself, Julia Dan. Come on down.
Hey guys, before I give my updates, I want to just hit one highlight that I love from Eli's updates. So one of our projects is the Trail Creek project, where we build beaver dam analogs. So basically, fake beaver dams in an area that used to have real beaver dams. And the entire point of that is so someday the beavers will return and we'll start building up that wetland again. And some great news. 1.5, 2 years after that project was complete, we've got a beaver family there. So, if you want to get in on that stewardship stuff, it does work, and it's pretty thrilling and exciting and it's not always that quick, sometimes it's decades, but this is a great one, and it's pretty thrilling to see that. So I am our water program director and our Red Lady director, and Matt kind of kicked this off. We're not always so fortunate to have years where we have a lot of wins. You guys know this, environmental stuff's hard. You're going up against big odds sometimes, and sometimes it's not always good news to report, but this year we've got a lot of good news. On our water side, one of our biggest wins was we proactively, through a coalition across southwestern Colorado, went and petitioned basically and went through the legal process to ask the Water Quality Control Commission to designate 520 miles of streams as outstanding waters. And that took 3 years of sampling, finding our higher quality streams, and the whole purpose of that is so that those streams remain protected. And they went with all 520 miles for the first citizen proposal to ever be successful there. One of the other things I love to highlight, and it's something that I think I'm sometimes a little bit nerdy in my water world, but I love to do, and we love to do at HCCA, legal protections for in-stream flows. I think a lot of folks don't know in Colorado you can legally completely dry up a stream if you've got a senior water right. And it's not that they're doing anything wrong, but kind of our stance is we'd like to see a minimum amount of that water protected for the fish. So through some gentle encouragement, and I mean I was ordered to do this by Eli, we quantified all of the things that we did in our in-stream flow program over the last decade, and we've done 80 miles of in-stream flow protections now, which is pretty exciting. And on top of some of those water wins, I know kind of the murmur on the street these days is all of the progress going on with Red Lady. And that is indeed in a better place than ever. So, quick update on that front. As you guys probably saw in the news, we've got conservation easement language that the land trust and the company have agreed to, town and the county have signed off, that would prohibit mining on Red Lady forever. Yeah, you guys can clap for this one. This is a big deal. And there's quite a few other elements to that process. So I think that the challenging thing with this issue, and I think Sue hit on that, is we are making tremendous progress. We're in a really good spot. We still have quite a few details to do to actually get the thing done. Part of that is a big federal land exchange. So the mining company is looking to acquire the land surrounding the water treatment plant. In exchange, we get to acquire a beautiful property up Carbon Creek and a couple in Saguache. And also we get those conservation easements that would prohibit mining and development on Red Lady forever. They would even let us legally ski to the top of the bowl, which I don't think anybody knows we're doing that illegally for decades now. So that part is another cherry on top. That said, there's still quite a bit of process. You guys are gonna get a barrage of emails in the next year, starting probably next month, because they're starting to do the public NEPA process for that procedure. So what that's gonna involve is information about this exchange, some of the values and benefits of it, and really just describing what that part of the process looks like. In addition to that, we've got a water rights issue that's outstanding, and we're kind of doing what I refer to as friendly litigation while we try to resolve what to do with the 30 CFS of water rights for that mine. And then the final kind of update I'd like to give on that, because this is a really dynamic process on this point, is we also are seeking a withdrawal of the area surrounding the mine. So one of the things with this project is the mining company has 1,365, approximately 100 acre, 160, depending on what type of claim, mining claims throughout the Upper Gunnison Valley. Even once this land exchange goes through, they are seeking to relinquish those claims. And one of our big efforts that we're pivoting to now is figuring out how to get a mineral withdrawal of that area so that when they give those claims up, they don't get refiled. Some exciting news is, I think this was yesterday, but Senator Bennett Neguse, our Colorado groups, went and asked Joe Biden to do that through an executive request. So essentially, we've been trying to get this through with the Thompson Divide. We've had the Build Back Better Act, and as you guys know, Congress has been a real struggle, but as of this week, he has requested that they go ahead and set that aside through an administrative action. So you're also going to see some emails weighing in. And just know when you get that, that is a withdrawal in support of a forever mine-free Red Lady. So now that we've had our annual stage to brag about all of the accomplishments, we're gonna kick it over to Paul, who's gonna give us Sue. We're gonna kick it over to Sue, who's gonna introduce Paul.
I can't overemphasize how much work Julie has put into helping save Red Lady, which is why she is our Red Lady this year, Red Lady number 45. In introducing Paul, for those of you who weren't here in the way back, Paul was, and so were a number of you, and we remember what the beginnings of this fight against the first mining company was all about, and it seemed like we were really David and Goliath. And over these 45 years at various mining company iterations, it's evolved to be a negotiated settlement that now we're just working on the details and hoping that they can be resolved soon, relatively speaking. And Paul, who was also here, in the early days, He has written a brilliant book on the history of the entire mine struggle that's been going on all this time. It took him 30 years to write this book, and I was waiting 30 years for him to finish this book, which came out last year, and it is absolutely brilliant. I really encourage everyone to read it so you'll get a good history and a really good emotional sense from Paul, who is not unbiased in his writing, but really presents it well. And so with that, I know why you're all here, really. It's to see Paul, so come on up.
Yeah, I don't need this, I think. All right, am I mic'd? Good to go? HCCA, wow, amazing, incredible. And wish Brett well in his new role as chief propagandist for Freeport-McMoran. And it's a lucrative position that'll give him some, maybe he can buy a house here. So, Crested Butte and the sacred bond of community, what is community? We talk about community a lot. I actually looked up the definition. It's a group of people living in the same place who share common characteristics. And so I'm going to describe here how Crested Butte got to that point 45 years ago when AMAX announced. So I'm not going to talk about how Crested Butte fought the mine, but why. And Brett asked this question too and answered it, I think, quite well. Love, he said. So my book is the one that describes the how, but I want to touch on the why. And forgive PowerPoints with words. I hate seeing these myself, but 9 points that I want to bring out. Common origins of the people who came here, habitat selection, lifestyle choices, shared values, tribalism, sacred icons, ceremonial ties, and non-conformity. So, and then territorial defense. So, Anthropology 101, the evolution of Crested Butte. Join me on this journey here, and we'll look at the beginnings of the generation that when I arrived here and first saw Crested Butte in 1969, and discovered something worth fighting for. So common origins, a lot of us came from large urban areas, the so-called real world. A lot of us grew up in suburbs that were places that were safe, secure, predictable, conforming, and dull. We came from a generation, the greatest generation, that has distinguished itself in World War II and fought the good war. Rosie the Riveter, we can do it, and they did it. They bent to the task of industrializing America and the world, and they did it really well. Inadvertently giving birth to the consumer society and the commercial economy, the big box mentality, and to see the world as a cornucopia of infinite materialism. And the throwaway society. When we used stuff, we threw it away. And we questioned, is this progress? Is this the road we want to travel? This is not the world we chose. Is this thing really annoying? Is it? Can you hear me okay? Yeah. All right. So this is not the world a lot of us wanted, and so we chose differently, and we had the option to do that. Habitat selection is a key point here, and E.O. Wilson, the biologist and philosopher, a true savant, wrote in his book Biophilia that habitat selection still persists among the human instincts. He describes in this book how the savannas of Africa are where we evolved. And to be on a high point in a savanna overlooking a plain of mixed land and being able to watch game come through that we might hunt and to watch potential attackers. And so the high point looking over a vista was a very important habitat selection for our forebears. And he describes the highest real estate values in New York City are the high-rises overlooking Central Park, because that habit still exists of habitat selection. So those who came here took that habitat selection a step further. And we went into wilderness, and we went as high as we could go. So if you're going to get high, you might as well get high in the mountains. The landscapes outside Gunnison offered this satisfying need for space in what felt like a shrinking world because of technology and the information age. We needed space, and those of us who settled here chose space. And many of us, like Thoreau, discovered that there is no companion so companionable as solitude, that the need for contemplative experiences in that natural world become a spiritual quest. And through good luck, great timing, and careful selection, we ended up in paradise, or at least with a view of paradise. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Is that good? Yeah? All right, good. All right, thank you. Ed, thank you, Ed. So paradise is where we ended up. And so this is what Crested Butte looked like when I first saw it in 1969. And something deeply appealed to me about this place. I wasn't quite sure that I understood what it was at that time. But when I lived here first in 1970, it was a dream come true, and I dream of it still. I dream of Crested Butte from that era. And this was my chosen habitat, or one of them, in the half a dozen places I lived in Crested Butte. Eric is here, who lives there now and has lived there for decades. The air-conditioned house on First Street, everybody knows it. And it was my man cave. It was small, intimate, cozy, and it was affordable. I think I paid $175 a month to Granny Yawklich for this place. And shoveling the roof in the winter to make sure it didn't leak, I had to shovel off into the backyard. And then when the backyard piled up to the eaves, I had to shovel the backyard to make more room for the snow off the roof. I loved it. In the winter, it felt like a hibernating bear. I felt like a hibernating bear. And I loved the coziness of my chosen confinement. And it dawned on me that snow in Crested Butte offers this communal isolation that really is a forced intimacy of community. That snowbanks in Crested Butte become these buffers between Crested Butte and the rest of the world. And there's a comfort in having that snow, and it makes Crested Butte feel homey. Lifestyle choices. Another bonding, grouping influence here. Some might see this photograph as depicting lassitude and indolence, those lazy hippies. But the company store bench became a civic center for Crested Butte, where folks came together and with equal rights to this civic center, and to just talk casually, to get to know one another, or not to talk, and in communal silence to just be, and sometimes that's more powerful than words. Tony's Tavern, a 3-2 joint when I was first here, a quiet place to imbibe with your friends. Don Bachman serving up a beer. Coming together to imbibe in an alcoholic beverage is another sort of rite of a community. So the mountain lifestyle inspired me to climb Mount Emmons. This is in about 1972. And standing there looking down at the town and at the mountain that I was on, I didn't really understand the influence that these two places would have on me and on a lot of the people who came at that time, that it would form a value system for us and offer an important perspective. To stand on a mountain is a perspective of self and place that I think is a very important way of understanding where you are. Many of us follow the advent of the mountain bike, a criterium in Mount Crested Butte, pushing my 35-pound mongoose that was built by Mike Rust over West Maroon Pass before bicycles were banned from wilderness, and forming cohorts of friends to bike together and establishing lasting friendships. Kicking hacky sack on top of Mount Elbert with Dave Lindsay, and being at the top of the world with our mountain bikes up there. We discovered camaraderie. We discovered deep friendships. This is my friend Graham Means on the left, who is a friend in Aspen, architect of the Friends Hut. He's on the board of the Friends Hut. Maybe some of you know Graham. And then Roy Smith, who's in the audience tonight. Roy came from England to lead Outward Bound trips. He was one of the first groups of Outward Bound instructors to come to the West and lead trips. And Roy later led Save the Lady ski tours. But the mountains can create instant friendships that will last a lifetime. We discovered the euphoria of skiing, what I call a dance with gravity on a ballroom of snow. And you know what it's like. But remember, anthropologically, this has an influence. I'm a Scandinavian by birth, and I think my genes were just suited to the oldest turn in skiing, the telemark. And so this is an ancient practitioner here, me, describing this ancient turn in leather boots, wooden skis, and woolen clothing. Don't panic, it's organic. Free the heel, free the mind, and all that. But except for a few nuances in gear, little has changed with the love of the glide on snow. We find ourselves discovering the past in a collective manner through going retro. And the retro urge, I think, is insistent because we are still attached to our deep pasts. And some take the retro movement a little more seriously than others. The hunter and gatherer here, and if there are any bow hunters in the room, don't even think you're going to partner up with this girl. She already has a bow. And well strung, I might say. All right. So shared values. This is where it really comes together. The shared values that this group of people who ended up here to fight the mind took on. We were radicalized. We were radicalized by the 60s, by the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, and the environmental movement. We became activists, especially radicalized during the Vietnam War and the protest against the draft. And this was the underpinnings of our activism. And it led to a distrust of the military-industrial complex. And we weren't alone in that. Dwight Eisenhower put it out in the 1950s. He said, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. I like Ike. This led to tribalism. When lifestyle choices and habitat selection and common values lead to tribalism based on a loose sense of mutuality in Crested Butte. And this was all establishing before AMAX came. Sebastian Junger, in his book Tribe, describes, he says, the preservation of tribe becomes a sacred task. He learned about tribe in the military when he was embedded with American troops in the Korengal Valley of Afghanistan. I learned 10 years ago, founding Huts for Vets, a nonprofit organization that takes veterans into the wilderness to offer healing opportunities for post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, military sexual trauma, because the suicide rate among veterans is over 20 per day. 20 per day veterans are taking their lives because of a loss of tribal bonding that causes isolation and a lack of shared purpose. So this is where we take our veterans. It's called Margie's Hut. It's part of the 10th Mountain Hut system out of Aspen, and it's at 11,300 feet. It's named for Margaret McNamara. It was built by funding from Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense, during the Vietnam War. So taking it full circle to bring veterans back to a hut that was built by the architect of the Vietnam War. The ironies are pretty amazing. And the Journal of Psychosomatic Research in 1979 found this fact that when people are actively engaged in a cause, their lives have more purpose and meaning. Historically, Lewis and Clark risked their lives. They gambled their lives on this collective bonding of a mission. And this was a military mission in wilderness, exploring the Louisiana Purchase. When Lewis and Clark finally broke through the Bitterroots in late fall of 1805 and ended up on the Pacific coast, they had a major decision to make, whether to go back before winter, if they could get back through the Bitterroots, or to winter over on the Pacific coast at Fort Clatsop and subject themselves to the generosity of Native Americans to allow them to survive the winter. They couldn't make that decision unilaterally. They put it out to the whole team, and for the first time, an official act of the U.S. government granted suffrage on this vote to a woman, a Native American, and a black African. The woman was Sacagawea, also a Native American. The black African was Captain Clark's slave, York. Suffrage extended because of the bond that had formed over the course of their travels and travails. An interesting experience in the Ute tribal system. Josephine Meeker, the daughter of Nathan Meeker. After the Meeker massacre, Nathan Meeker, who had been the Indian agent for the Mountain Utes in the White River, Nathan Meeker was trying to convert hunter-gatherers into farmers, and it was a total failure. He couldn't do it. His last act of defiance was to plow under the horse racing track of the Utes, and the Utes uprose and killed him and 10 of his agency staff. They kidnapped Josephine Meeker and her mother and took them up to Grand Mesa, and for 2 months held them captive. And when they were finally brought back, and I don't use the word rescued because it wasn't exactly a rescue. When they were brought back, these women had nothing negative to say about their captives. In fact, Josephine Meeker became a fixation from a Ute brave who doted on her. He fell in love with her and took care of her and saw her through this. But she saw something that changed her life in her view of Native peoples. And this is not an isolated case. Crevecoeur, 100 years before, had witnessed this. He said, there must be in their social bond something singularly captivating and far superior to anything to be boasted among us, the Europeans. And that social bond is what was witnessed. And many people living on the edge of the frontier at this colonial time went native because they were imbued by the freedom of the native tribal cultures. It's not isolated incidents. Unfortunately for the Utes, the dominant culture failed to appreciate their tribal experience. So they were evicted from the state in 1881 by an edict of Colorado Governor Frederick Pitkin, for whom Pitkin County is named, where I live, on the other side of the range. And Pitkin decreed in 1881 that the Utes would either be removed to reservations or exterminated. He was fronting the final solution for the Utes. The Utes were moved out, and that opened 12 million acres of western Colorado to settlement and development, which was guided by the maps that were made a decade earlier by Ferdinand Vanderveer Hayden and his Rover Boys. And among his group were the famed photographer William Henry Jackson, and then the Henry Gannett, for whom the highest peak in Wyoming is named, and this man, Samuel Franklin Emmons, who, of course, is the namesake of Mount Emmons. But Mount Emmons is named also the Red Lady, and that's, I think, how a lot of people know it. It's a more iconic identity. So sacred icons are the next grouping criteria. And if someone doesn't know Gronk, they probably don't really know Crested Butte. But there's Gronk. And Crested Butte is full of iconic structures that attract us because they're based on a comfortable human scale and they have historic value. People become iconic. People like Tony Mihalich and the Conoco. And imagine the grouping that went on around the pot-bellied stove in that gas station, in that store. So Crested Butte Mountain and the grid of streets on the valley floor both have iconic value in context with each other. Ceremonial ties, another bonding agent. How many have been to potluck dinners in Crested Butte? All right. So anthropologists call this reciprocal altruism. Reciprocal altruism. Give and receive. Give and receive. Gratitude and generosity. It's a trade-off that ties people together. Communal festivities. I'm sure all of you have costumes in your closets. How many events encourage them or maybe even require them in a way? But the idea of dressing up in a playful exhibition of self and a disguise that gives an alter ego, perhaps. This is from the early 80s when a few of us decided to dress up as bikers for the 4th of July parade. It was spontaneous. We just decided to do it and gathered what costumes we could. We put balloons in our spokes to have the sound. And so in the picture here, Nick Rader on the far left, Carol Bauer, who I referred to as Bowser, and that's me there in the middle with a wig, Patricia Dawson, and Kay Peterson. And it was this unplanned, spontaneous, serendipitous silliness that was just fetching. The Red Lady Salvation Ball, 45 years, Marilyn Leftwich setting a tone as the Lady in Red. But celebrating a cause with humor and outrageous behavior was something AMAX could not touch. No way. The community came alive to do that. And going beyond the town, communal baptism at Conundrum Hot Springs, how intimate is that? Or right in town, the free and unfettered Sunshine's Paradise Bathhouse. That's me interviewing Sunshine and getting the scoop on the bathhouse. A place where you could see more of your friends and strip down to the bare essentials with whomever happened to walk through the door. And there was a very free, intimate experience there. Non-conformity. This is the Rocky Mountain Biological, the Rumble Skunk Cabbage Tribe that came marching down Elk Avenue on a parade. And nonconformity is what keeps Crested Butte on the edge. And it's that edge that needs to be continually revitalized. Because when does nonconformity require conformity? There's a bit of a dichotomy there, and it needs to be refreshed to keep it spontaneous. So when a people or a culture is threatened, there comes an instinctive defensive response. And it's probably our very earliest instinct is to defend self and to defend community. And it happened for Crested Butte in 1977 with the AMAX team that came and offered a gift to Crested Butte. A future, a vision. They were going to take care of everything. And again, why did Crested Butte say no to this? So here we have Ralph Barnett, Stan Dempsey, Art Biddle, and Max Galewicz. And this was the core team of the AMAX group. But we outnumbered them. And we also really questioned the validity of their offer. We found it to be ludicrous for Crested Butte and ultimately threatening. And so, but there were others who didn't. There were others who thought that this kind of mine would be returned to Crested Butte and a revisitation of the historic sort of tradition of a hard work and a paycheck for something of hard work. But it wasn't to be a pick and shovel operation that AMAX was fostering. It was major industrial development, and there was nothing nostalgic about it. In fact, it resulted in this. Sacrifice zones like this, the Climax mine at Leadville, the gutting of Bartlett Mountain. Here's an image that Dennis Hall created to show what could have happened here. Mount Emmons with a mine. Red Lady is erased. This is an apocalyptic, fearsome thing to contemplate, which is why the fight was so pronounced. And the town rose up. Mitchell, the mayor, said it very plainly with beautiful rhetoric. No, stop, we love our home. It was a heartfelt plea. Who could disparage anyone for trying to protect their home? So don't climax in Crested Butte, even if Molly does make your tool harder. And the town council took a stand finally. They had to kind of be careful about it at first, but not a ton in 81. The town fought the mine then on every front and on every back with protest t-shirts. So here's the town council then in 79, Mike Verplank, Sleepy Jim Adams, Tommy Drake, Mitchell, Gary Sporsich, and Claudia Richards. Wes Light, the town attorney, really nailed it. He found that water was the fulcrum for the lever of opposition that delayed the AMAX juggernaut, and he found and defended it in court. The town has the legal right to condemn private property in order to protect its watershed. And it was Coal Creek, where the first time I saw Coal Creek, it was running orange and it reeked of sulfur. It was a dead stream. And AMAX worked a kind of alchemy to put in a water treatment plant that took the pollutants out of that stream and unwittingly set into motion the current plan to surrender mining claims and avoid the liability of that water treatment plant for Freeport-McMoran. Forming a moral matrix. Beyond the administrative, political, and bureaucratic strategies, the fight with AMAX necessitated a moral compass to guide it into the idealism and commitment required for a protracted war. Ed Marston, the founding publisher of the High Country News, giving a supportive talk from Paonia. HCCA board member Dick Wingerson pointing out a semblance of Chief Seattle's words. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. This is a generational responsibility that we have. He's pointing this out to Senator Floyd Haskell in Horse Ranch Park, where Amex wanted to run a power line. John Muir, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. This holistic idea, this interconnected concept that we all are part of the living world. And Shakespeare knew this hundreds of years ago. One touch of nature makes the whole world kin. Nature is full of genius, said Thoreau, full of the divinity. Thoreau brought in the divine, the spiritual, the sacred. Ed Abbey came to Crested Butte. Growth for the sake of growth is the ideology of the cancer cell. He equated Amex with a cancerous disease. It was a demonizing comment. Dr. Paul Ehrlich described the cold cash bottom line. Amex will destroy this area for the profit of only a few people. Rod Nash came to Crested Butte as a conservationist, basing it on a moral and ethical choice for the future. Doesn't the present owe the future a chance to know the past? Stuart Mason, iconic figure in Ashcroft, put it into one word what was happening in Crested Butte. The pain experienced when the place where one lives and which one loves falls under a threat. And finally, the Svengali of Crested Butte, the dream weaver and visionary, Miles Radiman, harnessed the power of a shared dream. And it worked. And we fought the good fight. And we did it in any way we could think of. And a lot of it was out of the box and creative. Song became a weapon. Tracy Wickland singing the mountain song at the top of Mount Emmons on that fateful day. Tracy and I dressed up in miner's garb, singing mining songs at the Hicka balls. Bye bye Amex, bye bye, bye bye Amex, don't cry. All we can say is golly, we're sorry, but the bottom just dropped out of Molly. And that's what happened. The bottom dropped out of the metals market and Amex had to go. But group song, do we do it anymore? It's got a huge power. And historically, singing with a group, the harmonic blend of voices has been a very powerful thing. Here at a Hicka Ball, the Red Lady Ball, Marcia Dowell, Sue Navy, Glow, Herschel Augsburger, and Annie Starr. Voices coming together. We skied en masse over to Aspen on the Save the Ladies ski tours. Roy Smith's idea that we would gather, and over 100 of us went up there. And we dug snow caves in Cumberland Basin. People who had maybe been on skis a couple of times. And we ventured up over the range and took our message to the other side of the valley, to Aspen. And then Amex pulled out in 1983. And the celebration on top of Mount Emmons was remarkable. Mitchell coming down in a helicopter and raising his fist on top of that mountain that he had worked to defend, that he would never set foot on himself. But he knew the importance of it. And I added this picture of this man on this bicycle. This is Ralph Barnett, Amex mining engineer, riding a clunker, because Ralph became infused with the spirit of Crested Butte over that 5-year battle and became, in a way, an apostate. That's how infectious the spirit of this community was. Dancing in the streets like people have danced for countless generations, to celebrate, to tell stories, to revel together in motion. So, who are we? And how do we see ourselves and our evolution? Where do we go at this point? Do we see ourselves as the idealized creation story, the myth emerging from purity and innocence? Or is it the Hollywood fantasy image of our ancient past that we maybe would prefer to attach to. I mean, Raquel Welch, come on. Ringo Starr and Caveman, and Roddy McDowell, Planet of the Apes. Popular images here. But this is probably more like what our ancestors looked like. And I could swear I saw some of these people at the bathhouse over the years. So the lines blur here. The epics meld, and we go back and forth from our ancient selves to our current selves. And remember that each of us has Neanderthal blood. Each of us has Neanderthal genes, and some more than others. So we wonder, how far does this regression go, and who is plotting the future? What primal impulses and passions lie in the heart and mind of Mark Walter? Who is Mark Walter? Mark, are you here? Mark, make a sign. I mean, you made Mark Riemann a stalker. Who is John Galt? Ayn Rand asked. So we're marching into an uncertain future here in Crested Butte and in the world. Will Freeport-McMoRan perform Escaladio on Mount Emmons and deface it like it has Morenci, their copper strip mine in Arizona, which is the most godforsaken scene you can ever imagine in its vastness, where the hand of man lies heavy on the land? Will Crested Butte continue the good fight? Dennis Hall wrote this years ago in his column, "We'll fight because we have to. This town is hardwired to fight a mine." It's for the reasons I've been putting out here. So we all seek utopia, a land of shared dreams at the end of the rainbow, or at the end of the yellow brick road. So Community Compass has been doing an incredible job wrestling with this question of community. What is it? What are the values? Authenticity, connectivity, accountability, boldness. What does community mean? But there's an impasse that everyone knows. It's an economic hurdle, a lack of opportunity for community to be recharged and revitalized with new energy, to flourish in a generational sense that's sustainable. Housing is vital for perpetuating and refreshing community. Can Crested Butte go small? Can affordable housing be integrated throughout the townscape rather than ghettoized in concentrations where alienation occurs? And I see this in Aspen, where the employee ghettos, and they're not unpleasant places to live, but they're all grouped in one part of town, and there's an alienation there that can be avoided. It's segregation instead of integration. Can Crested Butte apply creative solutions and think outside the box? This is a bold, creative, artistic district here. And I think maybe an answer is public-private partnerships that can harness reciprocal altruism and foment mutuality, not for profit, but for people. Not for profit, but for people. Where developers, builders, realtors, landowners can join forces with the public sector and give of themselves so that others can give back to the community long term. It all gets back to this. Core value is community, said Ian Billick in May. Crested Butte's future lies not in fighting against a mine, but in fighting for inclusion of those who can believe in community and cherish the soul of this town. And it's going to be just as hard as fighting the mine. And even more important, because a unified community will be needed for future challenges as much as it was needed 45 years ago to fight AMAX. Thank you. So where from here? Well, yeah, I mean, you've been very patient here. Starting on Crested Butte time, first of all, but if there are any questions or comments anybody would like to make? And you can even just shout them out and I'll repeat them if anybody has anything to say. Jim?
What's the lesson you've learned from Aspen as far as the affordable housing challenge?
So Jim asked, what's the lesson I've learned from Aspen affordable housing programs? That it works to a certain extent, and without it, you lose what the planning department over there refers to as messy vitality. That's a planning goal in Aspen, is messy vitality, or it has been. But they're losing it because the gentrification now is so extreme. The wealth gap is so daunting for a lot of the people who live there that there's a huge resentment now building up, and it's difficult to keep a good spirit in the community when there are 75 billionaires who either live there or own properties there. It's the most saturated, the most billionaire saturated community in the world right now. And if you're a working stiff at a restaurant or driving a bus and you don't already live 100 miles down the valley, there's a bit of resentment to it. So it's allowed people to live in the community and stay there, but it's a ghetto, and so there's a lack of a sense of equality. Another question, thought? Okay. Thank you. Oh yeah.
Have you come across anywhere that's, in the tourism, real estate world, communities that are succeeding in doing it right?
No. Have I seen an example of someone doing it right? I have not, but then I haven't really explored all the possibilities. But I think all resort communities are facing it, especially after COVID just drove up real estate prices so enormously. I think it's difficult to think that you can go back at this point. So I haven't seen examples. Does anybody know examples of places? Okay. Huge challenge. Okay. Glow.
I just want to thank you for still caring so much about us over here. And I appreciate that you still care so much.
This is the place that matters to me. A lot of the people who fought the mine are not here anymore. And when I was here last, I was with Westlight, and we were commenting on that. How do you explain it? And Wes said, I moved, but I never left. And that's how I feel when I come here. And coming across the range, it's a transcendent experience for me to come back into this town. So there's magic here, and I think with more people to feel it, there's going to be this dynamic that's very important to hold on to. So thanks, everybody.
Well, I really want to thank everyone for coming, and I particularly want to thank Paul for coming all the way over from that other valley to share, our story with us the way he tells it, because nobody tells it like Paul does. And I'll remind everyone that out in the lobby we have, as well as opportunities to join HCCA if you aren't already a member. We also have Paul's book, and he'll be happy to sign copies for you if you'd like. So this is our way of thanking Paul for writing the book, too. And we're really glad he did. Thanks, honey.
36 years, I never rush into anything.
So thanks, everybody, for coming. And there might even be some snacks still out there. Who knows?
I see Roy Smith has his hand up, and I'll just take one more comment from this man.
Why did Aspen not go the way Crested Butte did? Crestview was a working class place. We were poor, it was coal, Aspen was silver. What allowed Aspen to go where it went? What was it? Who were the characters, the people that formed the vanguard of that times today?
Right.
I remember the days when the people in Gunnison would talk about Crestview, and where it's, what's that thing we have every year? Not Farshid, it's something like this every day in Crestview. People are odd up there, they're different. The difference is what made Crestview. Gunnison was a town of shopkeepers. We were a town of who? Who were we?
Mm-hmm.
And who were the people in Aspen that allowed Aspen to go where it is today?
Aspen, founded on silver mining. It was a wealthier town. It's made of stone, not wood. The beautiful courthouse, the Wheeler Opera House. Eastern investments came into Aspen and furnished it with an opulence that Crested Butte never had. And then when the silver crash occurred in 1893 and Aspen dried up, basically died, skiing reinvigorated it, and then culture. So starting in 1936 when skiing in Aspen, and then the cultural advent in 1949, and it just went on from there. But it was the same kind of habitat selection that brought people to Aspen. The same kind of people came there, and the first thing that the quote hippie element did when they took over the government there by vote was to downzone everything because they didn't want the sprawl to destroy the ambiance of this beautiful place. That jacked up property values, and it's just been a non-stop escalation from there until now. The average price of a home in Aspen, $12 million. Yeah, crazy. One more, one more, and then that's it.
When a lot of your generation showed up here, I think you had a home, you felt at home here for all the reasons you discussed. How much does the fact that a lot of people coming to this community now just literally have a hard time finding a home contribute to them not feeling that this is home for them?
I say it contributes 100%. If you don't have a home here, you don't have a stake here. You have to be here. You have to live here. You have to feel part of the community. And that's why I say, housing solutions have got to come to the fore that can be affordable. And not just to rent, but to own. To actually have a piece of this place and take pride in it and take ownership of it. It's essential, I think. Thanks, everybody.